Okay, so let's buckle up. We're doing a deep dive today, looking at all these sources you shared about, well, humanity's push into space.
That's right.
And it's not just, sci-fi dreams anymore. We're talking the real future, getting off Earth, aiming for Mars colonization, and even what might come after that.
Exactly. And our mission here really is to unpack what these materials are telling us, like why Mars is the big focus right now,
Right.
and what tech is actually making it seem possible now,
Uh-huh.
what living there might really be like based on these plans, and yeah, what's the next step? Where do we go from Mars?
It feels huge, doesn't it? Like genuinely world-changing. The sources make it clear this isn't just theory, it's engineering happening right now.
It is.
So let's start with that first big question the material digs into. Why focus on Mars? It seems the why is shifting, isn't it? More about survival now.
That's a key takeaway from the sources, yeah. It's less purely exploration for its own sake and more about, well, mitigating risks here on Earth.
Like climate change, resource limits, that kind of thing.
Exactly those things. The sources suggest that becoming multiplanetary isn't just cool. It might be necessary for long-term human survival. Spreading our bets, basically.
Okay. And out of all the places nearby, Mars keeps coming up in these sources. Is it just because it's the, least hostile option?
Relatively speaking, yes.
Yeah.
That's what the sources zero in on. Its day length, about 24 and a half hours, is surprisingly Earth-like. That helps.
Okay.
But the really crucial thing, hammered home again and again in the material, is the strong evidence for water ice. Lots of it, potentially.
Water. Right. You can't do much without H2O.
You really can't. And the ability to potentially extract it there, what the sources call ISRU, in situ resource utilization, that changes everything for self-sufficiency.
So it has resources we could actually use on site. And the sources mention specific players, NASA, definitely SpaceX, pushing hard to make this happen soon.
Absolutely. Which kind of leads us naturally to the how. How do we even get there? The sources talk about tech that's, well, pretty much here or very close.
Yeah, this is the exciting engineering part for me. Reusable rockets seem massive in this discussion, right?
Oh, huge.
The sources really highlight SpaceX's Starship, not just as a big rocket, but because that reusability could drastically cut launch costs, like potentially by a lot.
Cost has always been the killer. Reusability tackles that head on. But even cheaper launches don't solve the travel time issue. Months is a long time in space.
Right. Health risks, supplies.
Yeah. Exactly. So the sources also look at next-gen propulsion, things like nuclear thermal or nuclear electric engines. They could potentially cut that Mars trip down significantly, maybe even to, 45 days, according to some concepts mentioned.
Wow. Okay, that's a game changer. And AI navigation, too. The sources touch on that for safer, smarter journeys.
Yeah, for handling the complexities of long-distance travel, reacting to issues automatically, essential stuff for safety and efficiency.
Okay, so we get there faster, safer, but then you arrive. The sources make it clear just surviving on Mars is the next enormous hurdle.
Absolutely. It's a fundamentally hostile place.
So how do we live? The materials talk about habitats, like domes maybe, or underground bases.
Both concepts are explored, yeah. Underground, maybe in lava tubes, offers natural shielding. Domes are another idea. The main thing is protection.
Protection from radiation, thin atmosphere, cold.
All of the above. Mars has barely any atmosphere, so no real air pressure, and way more solar and cosmic radiation hits the surface. Plus, huge temperature swings. Habitats need to be sealed, pressurized, shielded, probably using Martian soil or regolith itself as building material.
And you'd have to grow your own food, find your own water.
Right. Sustainability is key. The sources mention things like hydroponics, aeroponics for food, and that ISRU, again, getting water from ice, splitting it for oxygen to breathe, maybe even making rocket fuel to get back.
Closing the loop,
Yep.
making it self-sufficient.
As much as possible, yes. And then there's the really, really long-term idea mentioned, terraforming, actually changing Mars over centuries to make it more Earth-like.
Wow, that's ambitious. But the sources also kind of position Mars as maybe just the first step, right? Not the final destination.
Exactly. A second home, yes, but also maybe a stepping stone, a place to learn, to build experience. The material even talks about using the moon, maybe lunar bases, as launch pads for deeper space missions later on.
Using its lower gravity, perhaps.
Precisely. And then looking even further out in our own solar system, the sources mention places like Europa, Jupiter's moon.
Because of that potential subsurface ocean. The life question.
Exactly. That's a huge scientific driver, shifting from just living elsewhere to finding out if we're alone.
And beyond that, interstellar travel, that's still way out there. but the sources touch on it.
Briefly, yeah. Concepts like warp drives, generation ships, acknowledging that mastering Mars is kind of the prerequisite before we can seriously dream about the stars.
Well, pulling it all together from these sources, the reasons why, the tech making it possible, the challenges of living there, the vision beyond, it really feels like space colonization is shifting from if to when.
It does feel that way. The momentum is there. Necessity, technology, ambition. It's all converging. We're really talking about becoming a multiplanetary species.
Happening in our lifetimes, potentially.
It seems that way.
And you have to stop and think, what does that mean? For us, for humanity, becoming multiplanetary.
Yeah.
How does that fundamentally change our perspective on everything, our history, our future, our place in the cosmos?
Yeah.
It's something profound to consider, isn't it?